Welcome, everyone. You're here with Paula and Shannon, and we're with Sage Wellness Connection, and we are presenting our 8 dimensions of wellness webinars. And tonight we're focusing on environmental wellness. So welcome, everyone. Well, I guess it's actually this afternoon, not tonight. we usually do our webinars at night, but yeah, we're here in the afternoon talking about environmental wellness. And so I will start by giving you a little bit of background about both Shannon and myself. We often do this combined because we have such similar education. We both started out in the recreation field years ago and before we even knew each other. And we were both always involved in health and fitness in some way or another, whether it was coaching or teaching or actually participating in activities. And for myself, I developed an interest in holistic practices such as Reiki, aromatherapy, and meditation. And that's been really fun. I still do a lot of that and teach meditation as well. And we both went on to a formal education in the human services field, and we completed a psychological health and safety certificate, as well as executive life coach certificates as well. And our 200-hour yoga teacher training was something that we both did a few years ago, just something that came out of our passion for yoga, and it was just fun to work on. And then we had a certificate, and now we're both working on our 500-hour yoga teacher training. Yeah, and I guess that's led us to develop as wellness consultants with Sage Wellness Connection, and doing this rural mental health project has been a huge part of that for both of us.
Well, you make such a great point. For whatever reason, and you probably heard us say this many times, we didn't know each other when we started down this path and on this journey around recreation and wellness and well-being. And it's just kind of, I guess, snowballed, if you want to say, from there to include all these different other aspects in educating. And I think largely is because of our own interests. And I think that when we're going back and we're looking at where we began in that recreational piece, that was truly about exploring those interests, building those passions, whether they become, as we said in our other webinar, they become a job or an occupation, or they just become a habit or a passion on the side where it's something you just love to do, like our yoga, right? We've both explored yoga in different ways. We weren't teachers in it for a number of years. For myself, and I know Paula, you were kind of the same. We did some fitness instruction and personal training, and then this was just another area to dive into. So I think that's what's important in this, is to understand there's a reason why we kind of collectively came together, is because we had that passion with that understanding of the importance of our whole well-being has to be built on all of these different aspects, and the recreation taught us that. So when we are exploring the environmental wellness, that was also something that we developed across time too. It isn't just, maybe people think, oh, it's just out in the environment, how can I interact that way? It's cultivating that and learning that. And for us, part of that is we love gardening, right? So we were cultivating that passion in that environmental piece, really connecting with our environment and connecting with the earth, understanding what allowed things to grow, what nourished them just as well as it nourished us in our own mental health and well-being. So I think that's what's important to understand. This wasn't necessarily an occupation where we went into the environmental wellness field, but we understood that if we're to develop all of those different domains, we just brought in all of those different interests, and it hits each one of those domains and builds up and nourishes each one of those pieces.
And of course, we'd always like to thank the Canadian Mental Health Association and the Rural Mental Health Project for sponsoring this workshop. This has been just an awesome experience to be able to share the webinars and podcasts and social media posts about wellness with everyone.
And I think that's the thing, we're so lucky in this day and age in order to be able to just look online, find information around things. And we just wanted to bring it together to make it a little bit easier for people to
Mhm.
understand. And kind of, it's like a puzzle, right? If you don't have all the pieces, the puzzle really doesn't look that pretty. But when you start putting the pieces together, you really begin to see the beauty of that picture. And that's what this project has done for us. And we're so appreciative of the Canadian Mental Health Association for looking into saying, hey, maybe we need to do something different out in the rural areas that looks different from the urban areas. There's many things that are the same when we talk about the 8 domains. We all experience that. Doesn't matter what your living environment looks like, but there are some distinct differences from an urban setting to a rural setting, and the Rural Mental Health Project has allowed us to explore that and find out what are some of those differences, what are some of the barriers that might look different than if you were living in that urban setting. We have talked about before of sitting in meetings where you have somebody maybe from that urban environment in there not understanding when we're giving advice to people that you could go connect with this person. Well, that could be 5+ hours away from you when you're out in that rural setting, or you may not have transportation because we don't have public transportation per se when we're sitting in these smaller settings. So we have to look at things just a little bit different, but that doesn't mean that we can't do them. And what we appreciated about the Rural Mental Health Project was some of those basic principles were really in line with our own principles when we talk about mental health and well-being. And most importantly, that this is a community-driven program. And we really like that because we're looking to this area. And we want to acknowledge each area does bring its own flavor and its own uniquenesses and its own people to that. But that doesn't mean we can't have new people coming from the outside, moving in and bringing in that new energy and flair and so on. So we want to make sure that we're looking to our community first and we're doing what the community here needs first. And in saying that as well, this is a strength-based program. So we want to look at all the wonderful things that are already happening here. And you'll probably hear me say this multiple times because we have such awesome people also sitting here providing some great things and great supports. So we want to just connect the dots for people in that there are some things out there that can help build up each one of those areas for you. And it doesn't have to be scary to find out who they are. It can just, once we put some faces to names, and that's what our podcasts and these webinars have allowed us to do, is not only give information around understanding the domains, but also start connecting who those people are that can support you within that. But when we start looking at strengths, we have to also notice that we may have some gaps as well. So that's our hope too, is that we be able to identify those and find out how we can build them up, how we can support people. And maybe it's somebody out there that didn't realize that they could be that support. So that's a great piece when we're looking at that whole community view. We want to incorporate everybody within that because we have quite a diverse background. When people think rural, they think, oh no, it's just country folk or something like that. And really, we do have a strong agricultural influence here. Of course, we're surrounded by this beautiful lands. People are putting in crops, they have cattle, they have all of those things as well. But we also have a very big military base. Plus, we have all of us that maybe don't fit in either one of those two sides, but there's quite a few of us that are here every day creating a life for our families and our friends and our colleagues. So all of those people need to be incorporated in that. But in saying this, it is a big project. Everybody is unique in that project, so therefore we have to be collaborative in that project. This isn't just about Paula and I presenting to people, getting the word out. We are bringing people on for that very purpose, is to do this in a collaborative approach, because we often say it takes a community to raise a child. Well, it takes a community to support people as well. So we want to make sure we're collaborating with all people within our community and find out what it is they can offer. And when we speak of the developmental piece, it's to understand that everybody's might be different place on their journey and in their development, because this isn't just a chronological perspective. Of course, we're including that. We're looking at our babies and we're looking at our seniors and we're looking at everybody in between, but also where is their developmental journey at right now, and making sure we're finding supports that suit them where they are at right now, not expecting people to meet us where we're at if we're there supporting them. And lastly, and I feel most importantly, what we're really hoping in this project is that we'll begin to break down some of those walls, break down some of the barriers, break down some of the bias and judgment, and along with that stigma. Because we strongly believe that 5 in 5 people have mental health. This is not a word that I know seems kind of scary. And I think, Paula, you had said it earlier about people get confused of mental illness and mental health. Mental illness means there's a diagnosis, but no different than the person that may have a diagnosis. We all have mental health, and at times we can grow that mental health, and at times we can be challenged in that mental health. But what we're going to do today and in the coming days is explore the different aspects around that help develop and support our mental health.
Because mental health is just one aspect of health, of our overall health. And health is really on a spectrum. Some days we're feeling like we are at our optimum health. Some days we're maybe a little bit lower on the spectrum and we're not feeling as well. And so it's just changing the narrative and the dialogue around mental health to really break down those barriers and reduce the stigma for that as well. And that's why we really like to incorporate as part of our philosophy the 8 dimensions of wellness, as this is just such a tangible way to look at that whole picture, because it's not just mental health and physical health. There's so much more to us as human beings. And the wellness wheel and the 8 dimensions of wellness really allows us to take that holistic look at that as well.
And I think the point to that is this just truly encompasses all areas of our life. But what
Mhm.
we have to understand is how all areas of our life are interconnected, that one area can impact the other area. And we kind of get into that when we talk about the whole tire thing, because I think I was talking a little bit more when I use the tire analogy. If our tire's a little bit flat, we're not running at our optimum. But we have to understand that tire is constantly moving. So there can be different areas that are impacted that could be interacting with another area. And we're thinking, oh my goodness, this is all about our finances. If I could just get that straight, I would feel better. I would feel physically better. I wouldn't be tired because I wouldn't be stressed. No, actually, it's because we have to look at all of those areas. Why are you tired? Why are you stressed? Why are your finances taking a bit of a hit, or you feel as though that they are? Maybe it has to do with your occupation. Maybe the stress level is just too much, and you have to re-envision that somehow. And even today, we have to talk about our environment that we have immersed ourselves in. And we're going to explore that a little bit more, and breaking it into 3 areas just to make a little bit more sense of it as we go.
But it's so important. We always have to dive a little bit deeper into the dimensions, just because, like Shannon said, that if one area is out of sync, it creates an imbalance, because everything is so interdependent on the other area and they overlap. There's key pieces to each dimension, but one affects the other so easily. And it's just important that we speak about that as well as we go through this. But we will focus on environmental wellness today and talk about creating how we can create improved wellness in that area.
And I really like the idea of connecting our strengths, right? Because that's what's going to help us through in the times of being challenged.
Mhm.
So, we talk lots about harmony and what that looks like. And I think that's the idea, that if we can find that harmony or that balance, it's a little bit easier to manage those challenges as they come and go in each one of those dimensions.
Well, and we both really like playing with words to rethink things and shift our focus, shift our thinking. And I think that's the harmony, right? Sometimes We talk about balance, and balance is very important, but it's really hard to keep balance in life because, like Shannon said, with a tire, it's constantly moving, and so are all the parts of our lives. And so sometimes it's easier to think about it in harmony. The last time we spoke, Shannon talked about the harmony when you listen to a symphony, right? Everything's moving and there's so much action, there's so much going on, but there's still harmony. And I love that analogy when we think of our lives, and how harmony and working together, the interconnectedness and interdependence is so much more, I think, achievable, and we can wrap our brains around that a little bit more.
Absolutely. Even if you go back to that orchestra, right? We talked a little bit about what it sounds like. If you've ever been at the beginning and they're warming up, it just sounds like squeaking and banging. And you think, how could that possibly be anything good? And sometimes our life can feel that way. There's like squeaking over here and banging over here, and we can't get in front of any of it. But if we can step back and learn a little bit more, just as every one of the people within the orchestra, and come together like that, you get this beautiful, incredible sound.
Well, and it's interesting. I love the picture of the orchestra, because you can, even before the piece is played, you can feel the tension, you can feel the stress as everyone is working independently. Maybe someone's instrument isn't going together, maybe someone has the wrong piece of music or something, but there's just this little bit of tension in the air, and then everything starts and it's all working together and it's just flows. And so,
They
yeah.
constantly are called upon to make minor adjustments, right? You got to kind of move along, and maybe the conductor is just moving pace at a little bit quicker than they normally do. And you've got to adjust and move along with it. And that's still what creates that harmony.
Yeah, because we're not saying that you can adopt this way of thinking, this philosophy, and everything's going to be smooth. No, of course it's not. There, it's life, and we have to learn to adapt, and we have to learn to flow along with different circumstances and challenges, and even things that are going well. We still have to adapt to that also.
Yes, exactly. That's what keeps them going well. And what we like, in the wellness wheel is we have a set of questions, right? So you can explore each one of those areas, because often, because they are so interconnected, we may truly believe that, like I'd said earlier, oh, it's 100% about my finances. If I could just get that in order, I would feel so much better. But when we start doing that exploring, we find out, oh, well, actually, my finances are impacted because of my physical health. And when we talk about that, like we talk about 3 different things in that as well: our nutrition, our sleep, and then that physical exercise piece, isn't up to par or where we need it to be in order to gain the finances that we need. Maybe we're sick, quite a bit at that time, right? So it seems like we can't get ahead because we can't get to work. There's all kinds of possibilities in that could be kind of in that interplay. So it's important that you really explore that. And I think, Paula, and I always think I usually lean to you to talk a little bit more about the journaling, because I think you're far better at it. I'm always a work in progress, even in my own journaling. But I think that is such a great way too, beyond this questioning, right, is to consider journaling.
Yeah, Shannon and I have been talking a lot about self-reflection. You'll hear us say we've been talking a lot about it, because we talk
Yeah, we
about a
talk.
lot of things and explore a lot of things, which is one way to really dig a little bit deeper. But writing things down, being self-reflective, and it doesn't have to be in a journal. Some people like bullet journals because they're almost like a list, but they're still in a book, so you can keep track of things. Because we used to have a bit of an issue with Post-it notes between the two of us. We had some great ideas, but they were on Post-it notes and they got lost. So we've adopted, yes, we've adopted the using a book of some sort to keep your thoughts. Or lots of people like using their notes on their phone. There's actually notebook apps, and that's one thing I've started using. I love books, I love pens, I love writing things down, but sometimes I have my phone and I have a thought, or someone says something to me, or says, oh, you should look up this website, or watch this documentary, and I want to keep track of it because it's something that I'm going to be able to use in my self-development and on this path of exploration. And I think that's really a huge piece of the puzzle that you were talking about, Shannon, is being self-reflective.
Oh, absolutely. And then it is kind of makes sense of things then, right? Try to think just in your head about each one of these areas and then make sense of all of that is pretty tough to do if we don't have like other tools that we can bring in. And I think that's the journaling piece, just simplifies things to be able to, oh, here's my notes, here's what I was thinking of, because it's easy to get off track and jump over here, especially if we're feeling a little anxious about things. And then you can go back, reflect upon it, and then maybe build from there. So yeah, definitely a great idea.
I still have barking, so I will let you continue on.
Well, I think this just continues on from our conversation about really exploring the wheel analogy to this. Because when our wheel is moving along and we know that we would have to inflate it a little or it gets deflated, whatever it is, it's not at its optimum, right? We're not getting the best gas mileage or whatever it is as we're moving down the road. We're not having the most comfortable ride, whatever it is. It's because there could be pieces that are out of sync. And what we like about the movement part is it isn't just about one area. It can be multiple areas that are out of sync. And that's what, kind of leads us to have to explore where do we begin? What are the areas that we need to start with? We need to be realistic about, but we can't do that without that exploration piece to it.
And this is the part where we also think about that interdependence, because if number 6 on the screen I see is one that number 6 or number 2, where it's an area, maybe there's emotional wellness, maybe one area is physical wellness, that are kind of, you're feeling down, you're lacking in those areas. But maybe the area that's really well developed is your spiritual wellness. You have a very strong practice, whatever that may be for you, whatever spirituality is to you. So you call upon that spirituality to help you out in those areas where you're lacking, whether it's you're emotional, you're really intentional about, I'm going to do something to help myself in this area because I'm really struggling emotionally, and I'm going to connect. And maybe that is, if part of your spiritual practice is going to church, maybe it's actually talking to your pastor, getting some counseling in that area. So it's really thinking outside the box, getting creative with those areas that you're feeling really healthy and well and strong in, to support the other areas where you're struggling.
And I love that piece, right? Because that's what fits in with the Rural Mental Health Project, right? That's also a piece of the strength-based approach, right? We do have strengths in this. No matter if we're challenged in other areas, there are strengths that we can call upon. So I think that's such a great way to look at that. And then sometimes that opens up also another avenue for support and help. Just like Paula was saying, right? Maybe there is a pastor there that you could speak to. Maybe there's a group that you can connect with that also will support you and help you along your development.
Well, and we had a health promotions facilitator in the other day, and she was talking to us about physical health and how she was taking a class, meeting with friends. They were all doing it together, but she was so surprised how much that improved her social wellness. And then in turn, that had a positive effect on her emotional wellness. So it's really looking to it's going back to that holistic philosophy and looking at things at a broader perspective.
And I think that was the great thing with Christina having that story as well. It really spoke to her drawing upon the strengths of herself, but also drawing upon the strengths of other people. They were good at the encouragement to get you out there. She was worried about maybe it would be really competitive, but it wasn't. And then what she brought to the table was that social piece, that they could make connections. So it was drawing it in for everybody involved and then building up everybody's pieces.
And I guess maybe before we dive right in, I changed the slide a little bit too quick, but I think it's also important to note that it's okay to know where our limits are. I don't like to use the word weakness, but our areas that limits, let's just use that word limits. So maybe for someone who likes a fitness class that there's lots of people in, maybe they struggle getting out on their own. Maybe having that motivation, or sometimes it's even a matter of feeling comfortable in a fitness center or something when you're by yourself. So it is knowing your own limitations, knowing that it's important to then access those other people to help you, to pick you up, to just be there for support. So it's important to really be reflective again as well.
I think that's, kind of the funny part. It's not like we went, if we something was too heavy for ourselves to pick up, right? We have to get creative. Sometimes we have to call upon help because we're
Mhm.
just not physically strong enough. That doesn't make us weak. It just means we need to reach out to our community for a little bit of help.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's move into our environmental wellness. So, environmental wellness inspires us to live a lifestyle that is respectful of our surroundings. And like Shannon said earlier, we do break this down into 3 sections. And so we'll get into that a little bit more. So, this realm encourages us to live in harmony with the earth by taking action to protect it. Environmental wellness promotes interaction with nature, and it is the awareness of your personal and global environments.
And I think, even when we listen to that, it can almost feel a little bit overwhelming. Like where would I fit in that picture?
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's what was important to us to break down where we
Mhm.
can fit within that picture, because we all need to look to, ourselves, how we kind of fit within that, what we feel we can contribute to it, what works well for us, and maybe what does not work well. And so
Yeah.
that's okay too. And I
What's
think
reasonable and doable for us.
yes, because, we're human beings. At times we can be, maybe a little extravagant in our thoughts of what we're capable of doing. And we're going to go out and we're going to save all the environment and everything. And that's somewhat out of our control. I think we can pretty easily say. So what are the pieces that we can do for ourselves and maybe our community that's just around us? What does, my work allow me to do as far as the time I have to spend to do that? So there's all kinds of factors that also play into this environmental wellness, even in our consideration of how we can explore that and be a part of that.
Absolutely. So our first section that we're talking about is our home environment. And I think, I guess because environment, when we're talking about environmental wellness, it's pigeonholed the way we look at the environment. It's not just reduce, reuse, recycle anymore. It is bigger, broader than that, because we know that we're not going to be able to do those bigger, broader things if our own personal wellness is not taken care of. So in the home environment, keeping each room clean and tidy and decluttered, taking a look at our closets, which I know sometimes for me gets a bit overwhelming because I just want to put things away. Building routines, and routines we've talked about before, because they do help us just take out some of the thoughts and just be able to step in and do the action that's needed. And it reduces some anxiety and it lowers some expectation because we've set the stage for whatever we're going to do.
I think because we talk so much about the interconnected piece, often this is where, that emotional piece can come in, that
Yeah, that's
relationship
right.
to things, to people. So we can find ourselves keeping things because that is our connection, right? To someone or something or, a situation. So this is once again becomes about that reflection when we're talking about decluttering. What does that mean? Like, why are we maybe putting so much value in a t-shirt? And
Yeah.
right, I don't want to take away that. For sure, I have some keepsakes too, admittedly, of things that, where I've traveled or from, my child or whatever it might be. We're not suggesting you must just absolutely clean out everything, remove everything. But I do think we have to challenge ourselves at times as to why. Why do we need that? And for myself, it was just something I need to do. I can't think well if I'm in an environment that has a lot of clutter or a lot of things. I just need the space for whatever in my mind, even though it's a physical thing of needing space, but yet in my mind, it gives me more space to
Yeah.
think, be. So I have a bit of a rule with myself, that if I don't wear something within a year, I donate it, right? Because I am notorious for trying on something or buying something and it feels like the most beautiful, special thing. And I absolutely love it in the moment. And then when I get it home, for whatever reason, maybe the next time I put it on, it doesn't feel the same way.
Yeah.
Right, wrong. I don't know why, but I know that I feel bad about that. And then I leave it there. But every time I go to try to wear it, I can't seem to put it on my body. So then I know it's just not for me, right? So that's when I put that kind of timeline in for myself, that things don't come out of control, because I could probably keep doing that. And then it reminds me to go over what I have sitting in my closet, because maybe somebody else could use it even more than myself. And I think there's so many opportunities. Doesn't mean you just always have to give it away, because some things are worth a lot of money, right?
Mhm.
No matter what that value amount is. So there's possibilities of selling that online now, even if you get a few dollars back for it to put it into something else. I think there's all kinds of ways
What we
that you
talked
can
about before, trading like purses. We all
trading.
have lots of purses, right? Having a purse
Yeah.
swap.
And I
Um,
think those are such great ideas, right?
mhm.
That nobody's at loss, but you get to try something new. What a great way, because especially purses, every once in a while you get that one purse that you seem to just use almost to death. Of course, that's maybe not a tradable one, but there's other ones that, bags and things like that that we may have, that why not swap it? It's so much fun. It's such a social thing as well. And then you get a swap and try something new, and that person gets the same. So it's such great value for everybody involved.
Well, and I think there's also something to be said about stepping back. I think you and I have talked about this before as well, stepping back and making informed decisions about your purchases.
Yes.
Just because it's on sale, do you really need it?
Yeah.
Again, being reflective, taking stock of what you already have, because like Shannon said, I know that this is true for many people, that a cluttered home is this, also makes you feel like you have a cluttered mind. Having space, having room to be able to um, it just
Ooh,
feels, I think, uplifting
yeah.
to be able to have that space. And so just thinking about things, making informed decisions before they happened, I think is really important as well.
I
And
think,
it's also environmental, right? We're
yes.
not purchasing as much.
Yes. Oh, for sure. And, now with a push of what people like to call it now of upcycling things, there's all kinds of possibilities, which are so exciting, that people are using the wools from things and remaking it into something else. For years, people have taken pieces of clothing and made them into quilts, all of those kinds of things. There's so many creative and wonderful ways that things can be reused, that it's a shame to have anything kind of just sent to the garbage.
Well,
So
yeah, and you can purchase them from people, like you said, people are selling things now on social media platforms, or however it may be, and purchasing someone's old thing and upcycling it is very sustainable also.
oh, absolutely. And I just think that it becomes a little bit more of a sustainable practice, I guess, right? For ourselves. And I really like that piece about really evaluating, taking a step back, because typically when we're buying something, it is a little bit of an emotional purchase, right? We're feeling a little down, we're going to reward ourselves with something. And then just taking that step back, because I always joke about, I have a cart in many virtual shopping places, and I fill up my cart in all these places, and then I always step back and I very rarely purchase, because seriously, if I purchase as much as I put in my cart, I would probably have to work 3 more times harder than what I currently am. But I think it's important that we just take that step back and make sure this isn't an emotional purchase, right? Sometimes it's okay to reward yourself. We need that no matter if we're a child or we're an adult. But is it really something, one, within our means? Or is that going to cause more stress because it was really not in our means right now? Something that we, typically evaluate after Christmas into the January, February mark. Hey, I bought some things a little bit more than I should. So let's evaluate that. Is that within our means right now? But then also, do I need to bring something else home? and add to that environment? Or is there a better use for it? Like, and even when we talk about organizing things, just that act alone is an incredible thing when you can walk back into a room and you know it's now usable for you.
Yes, absolutely. And as well, just to further our home environment, um, finding natural lighting, making sure that you have curtains that you can open so you can access the natural lighting. That's not only going to foster your environmental wellness, but it's going to help you emotionally. You're just going to feel better by having a little bit more natural light, especially us in Alberta here, having long winters. We need that natural light. Research ways to conserve energy and set up a simple, usable recycling system. Lots of the rural areas now are having curbside pickup. And on many of the town websites, they'll explain how to separate your recyclables and when to put them out and the time that they'll be picked up and all of that. So that's all part of your home environment as well, keeping that environmentally friendly and keeping yourself environmentally well.
And I think that doesn't just translate to people that live inside of the towns. If you're
Mhm.
out on a farm or on an acreage, there is places that you can bring your cardboards and your
Yeah.
recyclables in town. So you just have to have a good system at home. I know when I was living out on the acreage, I always made sure my cardboards went together and it would stack up pretty high before we ever took it into town because, you're not like here when we're in town, it's not going to be a weekly pickup kind of thing. But if you have a good system in place, it's actually very simple to use. And then it's amazing the difference in your garbage
Yeah.
amount.
Or work with a neighbor to
Yeah,
have days where
absolutely.
you're going to combine your stuff and take it in. And, that works a little bit on your social wellness as well.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great idea.
So I
And
think we talked a little bit about this for the natural environment, about upcycling and being sustainable. I think we've both done quite a few projects where we've upcycled things, and it's fun. And I think again, it really speaks to that intellectual wellness where I need to be creative and learn and all of that. Many of our painting projects are painted on upcycled wood from
yes.
pallets even.
Yes. And I think there's so many, Pinterest has been a great thing for that,
Oh
right?
yeah, exactly.
Be able
Mhm.
to find different projects, some are well out of our scope and some are not. And like Paula said, it has just been so much fun to try things. You can make tables out of pellets and they're quite simple. And then you don't have to feel bad, if you're changing it up or you're passing that along to somebody because you've actually already reused something. Or, when we talk about vegetable and herb gardens, using those pellets to make boxes to grow things in. What a
Yeah,
great
well, you
way.
actually did that. You
Yes.
painted the palette and made an herb garden.
Yes, and it was so much fun. So it kind of hit all of those different areas for me. My curiosity and finding out how I could make that happen, but also my creative side that I could do some painting on it. And then finally my environmental side that I could actually plant the herbs that I'd love to have around me in the summer, and then I can dry them later. And I still seem to have many things of tea left here, of peppermint tea, because I went a little crazy on growing so much peppermint this year, but there's so many things you can do that can translate into all of these other things.
Well, if you have the space in your backyard, looking at researching how to start a garden, what vegetables are easy to grow, start simple so you don't get frustrated and give it up. And lots of simple vegetables like carrots, potatoes, beets, they'll last for months after the snow hits the ground, but just storing them in the right place. And if you don't have access to a spot to grow a garden, look to the community to find out if there's community garden space available, or maybe there's a neighbor down the street that has a big garden plot in their backyard that they're not using, and or an elderly person in the community that maybe is looking for someone to come over and help them with their garden. There's lots of options. Just have to get creative and take a look.
That's because it's not always about amount of space you have. And I've
Mhm.
learned that myself, right? The difference of the size of garden that I had out on an acreage, of course, I had
Mhm.
enough space to have it as big as I wanted it, in knowing that the workload comes along with the size of it. But moving here in town, yeah, I don't have a very big space, but I've maximized the use of it with making those boxes and things like that, and growing in and out of all different kinds of things. And then just connecting with your neighbors, right? Maybe where they're situated or directionally situated, they can grow something a little bit better. So they're growing something,
Yeah.
you grow something different, and you can do a swap in that. There's all kinds of possibilities
Well,
that,
we used to do that quite a bit. Sorry.
yeah.
We used to do that quite a bit at the office where we'd bring in different people would bring in different vegetables and have it out on the table for anyone to take and exchange. And it's so fun to be able to do that.
Yeah.
If you live in an apartment, maybe if you want to grow something on your balcony, look up urban gardening because they'll give you some tips for growing in pots. My son lives in an apartment and he was growing carrots and I think he even had a blueberry bush at one time. Um,
Yeah.
he does live in Montreal, so the climate is warmer a little bit longer, but there's still ways to make it work because we do it in the ground here. So there's ways to do it if you're living in an apartment and you're looking for some to grow some vegetables.
And, I even had a conversation today about one person was saying that their kids had a chance to try pickled carrots that had been from the garden and they never had that before. And she was just wondering where could she find those? And then in that conversation, we realized that one person had made beets, like pickled beets, and another one had made some pickled carrots. And so next we had this full exchange happening that one was bringing some salsa, one's bringing the carrots, and one's bringing
Mm.
the beats, and we're just going to do a bit of a swap. So what a great way that you can't do it all, but with a community, you can certainly have a little bit of everything then.
Oh, I think that's absolutely the essence of what we're talking about, just because that um, just picture alone that I think would really develop so many areas of your wellness, like social, environmental, intellectual, because you're learning something new. Maybe that person, I don't know if they ever made pickled beets before and they learned, and then the other person with the salsa and all of that. It just, yeah, what a great thing. I think exchanges, and it's environmental too, because it's not like you are ordering from a big box store from Amazon and having, everything that comes along with it, the packaging, the transportation, all of it, right? It's
And we talk lots about kind of the whole foods, getting stuff closer to home.
yeah.
And this is the essence of that, right? These are carrots and beets and tomatoes and peppers and all of that that we're growing locally. And now we're exchanging that locally with jars that we can give back, or we keep those
Yeah.
because that was a part of the exchange and we can reuse them again. Why
Yeah.
not?
What a wonderful thing. And I guess last on our natural environment list is the walking, riding your bike, or carpooling when you can. And I mean, obviously, if you're living in the country and you're coming to work into town, that's not going to be as feasible. But if there is someone that works in similar hours than you do, then maybe it's asking about carpooling, or when you come into town, it is walking if you're getting a coffee, or walking if you have to do some business or some errands downtown to get your mail or whatever. It's just really being intentional and purposeful about doing some of those things.
I even had a thought, like I know we're in this pretty expansive area here with lots of kilometers in between people, but wouldn't it be a great thing that, people often here head to Lloyd because it's a bigger center, or they head to Camrose and even sometimes Edmonton, that you create a bit of a collective that maybe people get together that, hey, we're going to Edmonton. I have 2 spaces open in my vehicle,
Yeah.
let's head on up. That's, I guess, what we're suggesting. Be creative around that. You just never know who's headed in the same direction, and maybe it is a work thing too. I know the difference, even for myself, that in our other jobs we've done a ton of driving around, having the difference of being able to share with Paula and so not always having to be the one to drive by yourself, just even in a social sense, is way better.
Absolutely.
Not to mention, of course, the environmental piece that we're not both driving on the road in a vehicle using gas, all of those kind of things, but we're collectively doing that together. But then you get all of those other pieces of your wellness wheel built up just even in that connection alone.
Oh, absolutely. Because if I had to get up, because usually we would leave quite early and make a 2 hour drive. And if I didn't sleep well and I had to still get up and make that drive, the coming back home that evening might be a little bit scary. And so to be able to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, Shannon, can you drive today? Because I just didn't sleep well," was huge for me. And just to have, yeah, like you said, having someone to talk to, that made the driving, and it didn't make it feel like such a chore to have to travel for work. So yeah, that was great. And of course, going back to the walking and riding your bike, that alone, if you're doing it just for pleasure, again, hits so many of the wellness dimensions. And so accessing our walking trails, and outdoor spaces that we have, I think is very important.
I think we're, actually quite fortunate in this area. We have just either here in town some pretty nice walking trails. I realize the weather is kind of creating a little bit of havoc for us, but we'll get there. But even beyond that, we have some great areas. Like I looked at Mistahaya and they redid some of
Oh
the trails
yeah.
out there. There's so many nice areas that maybe you can pool with people together and head out there and do a little bit of hiking in that area. So we have lots of things that are accessible that, like you said, Paula, hit all of those other areas too from our social aspect, but even in an emotional sense, to be out in nature
Oh
is
yeah.
kind of fills you up a little bit, but also in the physical sense too. You're getting that exercise, and what better when it can be out in our environment.
Yeah, absolutely. Makes me long for our kayaking.
Yes, it does, for sure. And I think this social environment, this is, why we put it under this discover piece, is because there is so many things, like so much information that you can discover. And we're so lucky now with so many podcasts, books, music, TV shows, all of those kind of things. And that's what we've loved about having the opportunity to do webinars and podcasts, is just to have these real conversations with people about what's going on, what tips and tricks do they have, because nobody's all knowing. It's great when you can look to your community and talk to other people, and even beyond your community, to see what other people are doing outside of that that could work for you as well. You had said, like, look up urban gardening. Yes, we're not in an urban setting, but if you're living in an apartment, it doesn't matter if you're living in Wainwright in the apartment, it's still living in an apartment. So your environment is going to be somewhat similar in that aspect. So look to these kind of things to find out maybe there's other things that you can do.
Yeah, absolutely. I find that listening to other people, I like watching documentaries, things like that. It's very inspiring to me, but so is watching a TV show sometimes. Sometimes I need that, right? Maybe it's just been a tough day emotionally. And so I'm going to be able to control my social environment by just, maybe sitting down and watching a show that makes me laugh, or listening to music is very important, I think, for myself as well, because I can listen to something that just totally changes my mood.
Yes. Oh, isn't that not the truth? And sometimes reading somebody else's story or whatever can do the same
Hmm.
thing, right? It's amazing the connection you can make just by reading that story, whether it be fictional or not.
Mhm.
More often than not, if you talk to any author, there's always some truth and reality in, and that's what inspired, whether it's even, like a Harry Potter, even still has some truth aspects to it in that social aspects of how people treat each other, all of those things,
Dynamics of,
dynamics.
yeah,
So,
teenagers, and yeah.
yeah, so you can learn things no matter what the story looks like. But
Well, and oh, sorry. I was just going to say, I think we've both been totally inspired by historical fiction books, where we can be transported back in time and to really get an understanding of how people lived and different cultures. And um, yeah, it's just a wonderful way to spend some time.
And it can be learning, right? Because once again, often they're based with some truth. Like, I was keeping that perspective there for sure. But we can learn from the things that maybe we did before that don't suit us now and really challenge that to say, why are we continuing to act in that manner, to keep our environment in that manner? I think there's so much learning even in that.
In the next couple bullets, setting a limit for social media and limiting your exposure to news. Now, we're not saying that these things are bad by any means, but sometimes when your cup is full and you're feeling overwhelmed, maybe it's not necessary to be up on all the latest facts about COVID, or what's going on overseas, or maybe it's okay to just protect your social environment and limit some of those things. Maybe read about it if you feel you need to keep up on news. Maybe reading about it versus watching what's happening on TV might be an easier way to digest it. And social media as well, it is definitely okay to spend some time on there. I mean, we post on there and we feel like we're posting healthy things, but sometimes, like, there can be too much of anything. There can be too much. Like, if I'm eating only apples all day, well, that's too much. So, you have to put it in perspective. There's so many other things to explore. And this is the same when, like, if you're looking at social media as a piece of the pie in our wellness wheel, and you're only doing that after work and you're spending 3 hours on that, well, your wheel is not going to be rolling along very balanced, right? Things are going to be out of balance. You need to create opportunities for all the other things that we talked about in your life to really create that harmony.
I think I like what you said, right? To just identify how it's impacting you, right?
Mhm.
Sometimes we don't take the time to really notice that exposure to the news. I get it. I'm a person, I like to know what's going on, but I have to know my limit as well, right? I have to know when I've kind of peeked over the edge of everything feels so dark or whatever. I'm not getting, the other balanced side to the information.
Yeah.
So I have to know that. And social media can be the same. There's some lovely things on there, but there can be some things that are negative. So let's just really have a look to ourselves and say, oh, okay, how's that impacting me? If I go past a half hour a day, yeah, is that impacting my emotional well-being? It's just knowing those kind of things, like in anything. I think your Apple thing is an absolute perfect analogy to that, to say we're not going to just sit there and eat apples all day. We have to have a balance to it.
Absolutely.
At least make it
Evaluating.
apple pie.
There you go. Evaluating the people that you spend time with, right? Is this someone that really feeds your soul, or is this someone that's depleting you? And maybe we have to have those people in our lives. And that's one of the reasons why we establish boundaries. And everyone has their strengths and areas of challenges, but it doesn't mean that you need to overdo it and spend all your time with them. Pick people that are going to be able to kind of mesh with you a little bit better. That's going to create a better balance.
I think, it just feeds into, right, that establishing the boundaries piece,
Yeah.
right? That is not up to somebody else to establish that and, how much time they spend with us. We really have to look to ourselves of how that impacts us. It is healthy to create boundaries, and
Mhm.
it is okay to say, hey, I might need every Wednesday or whatever off and leaving that to the things I need to do. Often we have, like we've talked about, competing demands, but so maybe we need to carve it out in a little bit more flexible way. But it's absolutely okay to create those boundaries of whatever they look like, whether it's the that you spend with different people, whether it's the news that you watch, whether it's the time you spend on social media. Those are all important things to establish for yourself in order to keep that balance as we keep talking about that wheel.
And even for parents, right? Yeah, of course, our kids have needs and they need us and we need to spend lots of time. But if we've talked about the oxygen mask analogy, we have to take care of ourselves. We have to put our oxygen masks on first so we can care for our children better. And so if that means taking a couple hours a week out of your time with your family to be able to go and do something that's going to fill you up and better yourself, you're going to be just so much healthier and so much more available for them when you come back.
I think that's such a great point because probably people are challenged the most when we talk about boundaries when it comes to family. And maybe friends kind of fit in there a little bit too. But certainly, yes, we're not, we don't have to be available 24/7 all the time. And it's okay, no matter what your situation is, you will find more strength in giving yourself some moments to breathe and give yourself space to think, all of those things to be able to come back in a healthy way.
And I think even as if, if you're a single parent and you're listening and you're thinking, wow, that's not going to work for me. Again, access that broader community. Again, thinking about taking the social wellness piece into play and connecting with a neighbor who maybe they're available to watch your child an hour here and there. And maybe they would actually enjoy that because they're looking for something else to do. So it's thinking a little bit outside the box and a little bit deeper about these things because we're reflecting on what we need.
I like that because, having that experience myself and feeling kind of guilty if I got a babysitter or something like that, I think that that's what that judgment and bias that may come to us either from other people or even from ourselves. It's okay, right? It's okay to look to other people to support us. That's what we're trying to encourage here, right? Even this whole entire project. Look outside of yourself. It's okay to have support. It's okay to give
Mm,
yourself some space. All of those things need to be available so we can keep building that wheel.
yep, absolutely. And this is just kind of recapping what we've already said. Um, we always talk about being respectful, inclusive, and supportive to others, and that's just going to broaden your life in general in many ways. Being aware of your surroundings and your community, what's going on in your community, where are the risks, what's going to impact you from the community. And again, taking personal responsibilities for your actions. Are you just buying to buy, like we talked about earlier, or is it something you really need? Or what can you do to kind of take a look at your home environment?
I think we even talked about a story before about a mom who had, her son, I guess if we say, got in a little bit of trouble or whatever it was. And she came up with a pretty creative way to give back to that community that he was a part of as well. But she also didn't make him just do it alone. So they went and they did pick up some garbage behind some of the buildings. And so he could connect to the fact that we all have to give back to that community. And if we do things to that community, we are impacted by that as well. So I thought it was a great way to not just punish him and you have to go out and do that. She did it together because it takes all of us to do this. And it is comes across a little bit more supportive, but also can really drive home a point of how much better and how good you can feel about something when you accomplish it.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a really unique story. And I think that was great. The fact that she did pick up the garbage with him. It was a team effort. It wasn't a punishment because I don't think he would have learned if he thought it was a punishment. And then he's not going to be able to take that forward to say, hey, I can do things on my community to make a difference.
Yeah. Yeah, you're absolutely right. When we talk about punishment, no longer are they focused on that possibility or that sense of success. They're just trying to
Mhm.
get through the punishment. But creating that teamwork and then that feeling of success, then you have good feelings around being, good to your environment, giving back to your environment.
Right. And I think that's the same as the story about exchanging the beets and the carrots and all that, right? It's creating good feelings. It's not a punishment. Sometimes we feel like it's a punishment when we have to pay for something, but it's such a great feeling to give something and then get something in return, something that you've created with your own hands, especially. So yeah, that we've pretty much covered all this as well, talking about growing our own food and buying locally as well. And there's lots of different greenhouses and farmers market now as well in this area and other small villages and in the area also.
You're right. And it's looking to those strengths, like we
Mm,
met at a farmer's market, people locally that are making and creating their own different honey and honey concoctions, we'll say,
yeah.
of different flavors and all that. What a great thing. That's like next door neighbors almost in proximity. And then it's right there. The product hasn't gone through many hands. A limited amount, you could buy it in bigger quantities, so you didn't have to have a lot of different jars and things like that that can come along with it. And maybe you can share that, right? Maybe the bigger the bucket, then you can share that out with jars that you have at home. So there's all kinds of ways you can do things.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
I have to say, even from what I'm wearing today, it's always been a bit of my practice. I love going through vintage places, like with clothing or just what we might call secondhand, because I think there's some beautiful clothing out there, and I'm not prepared or necessarily in position to spend tons of money on clothes, but I think you can have such beautiful clothes without having to do that. And then we're doing that whole upcycling place
Oh
pieces.
yeah. Some of my favorite pieces I've gotten from a thrift store, or I go in there and they know me at one of the thrift stores in town because I always say, oh yeah, I'm in to do my treasure hunting, and I'll find something unique. And if I don't like the color of it, I'll paint it or alter it some way. But yeah, if you haven't been to a thrift store, go to a thrift store, donate your clothes, check out what's there. It's really fun to be able to do.
Done a book swap since I've lived in Calgary, right? Where
Mhm.
you could take your books back, exchange for not exactly books per se, like they would give you an amount of money and then you can go and look through other books and eventually buy some. So there's such a great way. Obviously libraries are another excellent
Yeah,
way.
it's a
There's
very
way more available.
sustainable.
Yes. And it is just more available now. And the pandemic has even created that even in a better, more efficient way with libraries in order to get books and information and all of that. So that's another great resource. And just doing those book exchanges as well, another great way, because as you know, if you've looked at the cost of books of new ones, um, quite pricey now. So
Well,
it
and the
is,
libraries even do a virtual, you can check out a book virtually and read it on your
yes,
tablet or e-reader, and then it just goes away when the time is up, and then you can do it again, and you just purchase a library card. They're so inexpensive, library cards. They're really the cost for a whole year. They're the cost of one book, and then you can read as many as you want. And yeah, you don't even have to leave your house. Although you should leave your house, like we said, once in a
yeah.
while, but
Walk down to the library then.
walk to the library, get your library card.
Yeah,
Um, anyways,
exactly.
but yeah, libraries are amazing resources in our community. Um, and I think right in our community itself, right in Wainwright, we do have a community garden out by the base. And I'm sure there's lots of people that do partner to grow gardens as well.
I think there's other great ideas that we've been learning. Like even we have this great impact committee that, was built around supporting people's mental health and well-being. And we've had great ideas flow through there about creating some boxes for people to exchange food, all of that, because, I think those voucher type exchange programs are excellent ways because we often make judgments on, oh, they have this or they dress like that, so they can afford whatever they want. And sometimes that's not the case. So people can do those kind of exchange and or get food or whatever it is of what they need for the day without like kind of working through the judgment and that bias so that it's kind of open to anyone. And these boxes alone, what a great way if you've bought too much pasta and there's no way you can use it. And maybe you can put that in the box and exchange that out for something that you actually need and
That's
that
an
gives
awesome
your
idea.
family. Yeah, I think it
The
is.
sorry, I was just going to say the impact committee itself is open to anyone to come to a meeting or join and be a member. Is that correct?
Yes,
Mhm.
absolutely. And it's not because you're in the mental health and well-being industry.
Oh,
It's really getting perspectives of wherever you're at, no matter if
we have someone from
you're,
Ford,
yeah,
the Ford dealership,
yes.
and that person's come regularly since the committees started.
Yes. And I think that's important because we're all coming from these different places, even if you're new to Wainwright. We need to hear your voice, right? Is what a great way then to make some connections for yourself if you are new to Wainwright or if you're new to this country. It's really important, right? To step out, connect with people, and learn what kind of resources that we do have.
And take a look at our website, sagewellnessconnection.com, under our mental wellbeing resource hub. And that's where you can find the information for the impact committee. Send them an email if you're interested in coming to a meeting. There's many different areas. Shannon does our website, and so she has all of the 8 domains. And if you're interested in finding out where you can improve your physical wellness, you click on that button and that would take you to the gyms in town, fitness centers, yoga studios, that kind of thing. Learn about mental health and addictions, the psychologists that have online practices. Personal trainers are on there, our family and community services, so many wonderful resources in the community right at the tips of your fingers, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, it's all there. And so that's been really exciting for us to be able to offer that service. You're on mute, Shannon.
I said, like Paula said, if you know people that belong on here, please reach out to us.
Yeah.
We have our website there. You can connect and contact us through there, or just send their information if they're willing for you to do that. We would greatly appreciate that. The more connections we make, we're going to touch more people.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for being here with us today. And we are Paula and Shannon with Sage Wellness Connection.
Thank you.